now got
The fun bit.
the fun bit. So we've got everything else has been brilliant as well. But we've got lifestyle. So I want to introduce you firstly to Lewis Nunn, who has just offered me a holiday, which I'm just, well, you haven't really, but you might do. Yeah. Contributing editor to Forbes magazine, which is a luxury brand magazine, 19.8 million copies, reaches 94 million people worldwide if you're taking the online as well, which is fantastic. And there you are, see? Yeah? And you've just been telling us he went to the Arctic and all these wonderful places that he's going to be talking to you about in a moment. 1 minute, I'm in my introduction. Oh, he wants a holiday.
Thank you.
He totally wants a holiday.
Yeah, I bet.
I know, Sam. I heard about the holiday. And then a former colleague of mine, Ros Laws. Sort of a former colleague. We worked in the very same building, but not for the same publication. So you were at the Birmingham Post and Mail for 27 years.
That's right.
Entertainment reporter, lifestyle theatre, lots of celebrities. I think your profile picture is you talking to Kermit, isn't it?
Basil Brush.
Oh, Basil Brush. Basil,
I have met Kermit and Miss Piggy.
I was going to say, I thought you had as well. So there isn't any celebrities I don't think you haven't met.
A few, but...
Yeah, but you've met quite a few. Yeah. And you left there in 2017, you've been freelancing ever since for places like the Birmingham Hippodrome. You're actually on the RTS Midlands as well, aren't you?
Yes, I'm on their committee.
On their committee. So I want you all to join the RTS Midlands, follow them on LinkedIn. But I'm going to throw it over to Lewis first and then to Ros, bit of an introduction, and then I want lots of questions. Okay, and I will come back to you. Oh, you just said about the nice photo, didn't you? Sorry. Yeah. Okay, Lewis?
Sure. So I'm the contributing editor at Forbes for luxury travel and cruises. So I look after all of our global luxury travel because we have many English and non-English editions of the magazine online and in print. I started off blogging as a travel blogger because I knew I wanted to become a journalist. I thought I'd kind of need to work out a way how to get into this. So I started blogging initially, and then I thought, actually, I'm enjoying this, but I'd rather be paid as a writer to be able to go away, not having to make my own money from advertising and things like that. I wanted to actually just get paid for doing the job. So I had to figure out kind of how to climb up the ladder, and I started off by writing for a really tiny travel magazine called World of Cruising back in 2014, I think. And after that, after being published in a really tiny magazine, it actually did open the doors to bigger newspapers. So I emailed The Sun, the travel editor Lisa, who's still there now, and God bless her, she gave me my first ever commission, which I covered a tiny arts festival in France for a couple of days and got published in print. And as soon as I got published in a newspaper, all the doors opened. I jumped straight from The Sun to the Telegraph, so that was quite a change politically and reputation. But that was quite a big jump, and after that all the other newspapers were kind of contacting me to do cruise material because I made myself a specialist in cruise because at the time it wasn't really written about a lot. So I decided that would be my particular area. I worked as a freelancer and then COVID hit, which as a travel journalist is quite a fun time. Obviously no more travelling, nothing, and being a freelancer with not really any protection, it was a bit of a shit moment. So I had a total change and studied psychotherapy, which was interesting. Started practicing as a psychotherapist, and then COVID finished, travel came back, and I went back to journalism. I got offered my role at Forbes last August. I've been there, nearly a year in this summer, and and that's where I'm at now.
Okay, thank you very much, Ros.
I knew I wanted to be a journalist from the age of about 10. So I did things like work experience at my local newspaper, which was the Rugby Advertiser, not too far from here, down the road. I grew up in Rugby. I'm so old that back then there were no such thing as journalism degrees. It was decided, it was considered quite good if you wanted to be a journalist, just do a degree in whatever you fancied and then go on to have an apprenticeship after that. So that's what I did. I studied international studies and economics at Birmingham University. I applied to papers all around the country and rather reluctantly applied back to the Rugby Advertiser, and that's who took me on. But it was a bit of a pain to have to go back home again, but it was the best training. They sent you away to Sheffield College for 10 weeks to learn, and they taught you shorthand on the job, which was fantastic. You did all the training, took your exams, and then I left and went to the Birmingham Post and Mail, where I stayed for almost all of my career, really. Worked on the Sunday Mercury, was doing like general news and features, which I liked, but I've always really loved television and showbiz and entertainment. So I started doing more and more of that and became the TV editor. And for a lovely halcyon period, I was reviewing films in work time, which was really nice. When I know, I mean, everything has changed now. They stopped doing that about 10 years ago, really. They're a bit like, hang on, you spend like 2 hours a day at the cinema? Oh, no. You could be writing 10 stories online for that in that period of time. So, but yes, I had a lovely time. And one of the perks was press travel trips. So I've been around the world to some amazing places. But yeah, the whole printed journalism is dying. I think it's pretty much dead. Yeah. And so I have seen all that massive change from print to digital. I've seen us writing only for print, and then a period when digital was a bit of an afterthought. It was like, oh yeah, perhaps we should put that online as well, to everything is digital first. And we also have a paper, but hardly anybody ever buys the paper anymore. I don't suppose you remember when you last looked at a paper, but it's probably quite a while ago. So anyway, we went through many rounds of redundancies. As I remember when in that huge newsroom where I worked with Lisa, there were about 200 people. The first round of redundancies got rid of about 50, and it's been shrinking ever since.
There was 4 newspapers in there, wasn't there?
Yes, that's right, yeah. It was amazing, wasn't it?
It was amazing. It was such a
Sorry,
real buzz.
I feel such like an old crony, the good old days. But it was, and we were lucky. Yeah. But anyway, we have to adapt to the new era. And I eventually took redundancy in 2017 and went freelance. I was fortunate that I'd made a lot of contacts, so I still work for people, for theatres, and joined the Royal Television Society, got me on as a committee member as soon as I went freelance. I took over all their social media, which was quite fun. This is all as a volunteer, but it is quite good as it leads to more connections. So I do, every time we put on an event as the RTS Midlands, I always do a report on it, and I send that off to the RTS's magazine television, and they actually pay you and have commissioned me to do other stuff. So sometimes it's worth doing voluntary stuff to get paid to do other stuff. You meet more people. I mean, through the RTS, I've been able to chat to Lenny Henry. We use him all the time. People like that. He actually judges some of our student awards, which is great. But anyway, I'm probably digressing. I'm going beyond my 5-minute intro.
Yeah, 5 minutes. Come on.
Yes. So that's it. Where we stand. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Who's got first question, please? Yep. Khadija. Sorry, my brain. I was looking at you going, Khadija, and my head wouldn't work. Just if you can't hear, hang on.
When I jumped,
do you want to repeat that? In case people couldn't hear.
How would you compare your writing now that you're writing for Forbes in comparison to the beginning when you were blogging freely?
Yeah, I mean, when I jumped from blogging even to writing for The Sun, there had to be a huge leap in the writing, because as a blogger you're writing so informally, and as a journalist that's got to go out the window. It's still personable, it's still about your experience, and you're still connecting with the reader, but it's a lot more formal than blogging. And the language that you have to use and the information you have to find. I really did become a journalist, because as a blogger you could kind of talk about things a bit more casually, and as a travel journalist I think there's a misconception that it's just kind of going away and and saying, I had caviar and drank champagne, and and that's bollocks. It's not that. You have to find so much detail. To be a travel journalist, you actually have to be quite good at interior design, because you're picking out a lot of features about the hotels you're staying in, really specific details about furnishings and the kind of wood in rooms and things. Like it's detail. So that, I would say, that was the biggest difference. Is you have to, as a journalist, it's about finding the detail, even in travel.
What would you say your least favourite element of travel journalism is?
I would say being on staff at Forbes, I'm very lucky. Being a freelance travel journalist is hell, because you will never make an income from it that's going to pay your bills. We were talking about this earlier as a wider issue in freelance journalism. I think being at the point you guys are all at, if you want to be freelance journalist, you have to seriously think about your finances, because the fact of the matter is you will not make a full-time income from being a freelance journalist. If you do copywriting and things as well, that can top up your income. But if you are only relying on journalistic commissions, you will not make enough money. So that is the thing I would say I like the least about freelance.
It's a bit like having a portfolio career.
Yes,
Sort of say,
100%.
like, doing lots of different things.
100%.
Yeah.
You need a plan B and a plan C
Yeah,
and a plan D.
And a plan Z,
Yeah.
yeah. Was there one more?
Do you
We
have
back to.
another question?
No, I
Oh,
was
sorry,
saying
yeah,
thank
sorry,
you.
yeah.
Okay, who's my
Right.
next question from? Ray?
Hello. Okay, cool. You might have gone over it earlier. I might have missed it. But what kind of qualities would you say that would give you an edge if you wanted to go into magazine writing?
Do you want to take that, Roz?
If you want to go into what writing?
Magazine writing.
Magazine writing.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, you start.
Magazine writing, the difference between magazine writing... Oh, do you know what? I wouldn't say there's a huge difference between magazine and newspaper.
No.
Especially now, actually, because I think there might be the idea that in magazine you have to be more kind of talking in a more dreamlike language. That's not true. If you do that, your editor's going to call you out and say this is like advertorial. Stop it.
We want hard facts here.
So
we don't want this amazing place and
exactly.
all the cliches.
It's not a travel brochure, and the same with all freelance journalism. It's about the hard facts. So actually, I would say there's not a massive difference between newspaper and magazine. Actually, I don't know if you would agree.
And writing online, which is what most things are these days.
Mm.
Yeah, you still need to have to be accurate. Get your facts. Also, editors like clean copy. So get your grammar right, get your spellings right. Check, read it through again and again. Give it to somebody else to read before you send it off, because you'll have missed a typo or something. Yeah.
And it's important, isn't it? Did you? I may have got the wrong meaning, but did you mean what's the difference between sort of news writing and sort of feature writing?
Yeah, or like something that would, like, let's say you were to apply to a job at a magazine, something that like whoever's looking at it would look at it and look at your application and say, oh, I'm going to choose this person over that person.
In terms of the writing?
Yeah.
I think the magic trick is finding the balance between having a lot of detail and being creative. Because a lot of journalists can find loads of detail and write something that's full of facts. But if you can balance that with being really creative and engaging, that's what makes a really talented journalist.
Yeah, you don't want it to be dry. And,
no, you don't want dry.
You want to be able to visualise, like if you're talking about a place, you want to imagine yourself there.
100, and that is always my approach when I'm writing a travel story. I want someone to be able to read it and completely imagine it to the tiniest detail that I'm writing. I don't want a single question to be in their head about how it visually looks. That's really important to me.
I think possibly, Ray, you were also asking about like top of the CV, most important details to have on your experience and things like that. What's the most important aspects that you would say?
I think it depends if you want to be freelance or in-house. Freelance, I'll be honest, they don't care about your CV. As long as you've been published, it's about the story you're pitching. That's far more important. Having a really good headline crucial in freelance pitching, so important, because if you haven't got a strong headline, the editor's not even going to read past that. So I would say in freelance, your CV doesn't really matter as long as the editor knows that you have been published in some kind of publication.
You can show them a couple of, links to a couple of other things.
Yeah, exactly. That's more than enough. The CV doesn't really matter. In terms of in-house, I think if you want to be in digital, having knowledge of SEO is essential. If you want to be in digital journalism and you don't know SEO, you're already 5 steps behind. It's so important now more than ever, because writing something online that's really engaging, has a really interesting hook, is no longer enough. You need a strategy behind it about how that article is going to pull in readers, because commercially, our industry is such a commercially driven industry, especially with digital. If you write something and it gets a couple hundred views, you failed.
Yeah.
So you have to know that's going to have that reach.
And the immediacy of how many people are reading that story.
Exactly, it's so important.
People are looking at that all the time,
So I would say learn SEO. That's the best tip I can give to anyone wanting to go into digital, and have that on your CV. If you say that you have a thorough knowledge of SEO, that's great brownie points for you.
With that, you're not saying that if they were to present an article they've got on their own website, which has got very small views, that's not...
That doesn't matter. No, that doesn't matter.
It just shows that you can write.
You can then evidence what you would do for the SEO.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
real power.
Yeah, it is. And it's a buzzword on the CV for editors, SEO is. Absolutely. For
Ooh.
sure.
Did my phone connect?
Is that someone ringing you about SEO, Ray?
Did my phone
Taking
connect
some
to the mic?
tips.
What's going on?
Question from Becca.
Okay, Becca,
What's that?
can you pass the microphone on to Becca, please? Thank you. Becca's one of our first years, Ray was a third, so is Khadija.
So my question is, what is your opinion on how digital journalism is becoming? Do you feel like that's hindered your career or actually helped fuel it? The positives.
So
and
what was the last bit?
do you feel like it's kind of hindered your career or also fueled it with how online and digital journalism is becoming, especially as a travel
It hindered it in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But opened it up in others. I mean, it's quite nice that people around the world can read your articles. I mean, we used to be very geographically,
Absolutely,
very geographically focused. Like, if this happens in Birmingham, we will only write about Birmingham, because only people in Birmingham will read it, or only people in Coventry. But now it's, a lot more global, which is good. But I hate the way that to get the clicks, there has to be ridiculous headlines. The sort of clickbait headlines, the sort of thing that you actually makes you feel annoyed that it's hooked you in, and you click on it and you read it and you go, well, you haven't even answered the question that you said in the headline. And there's so much rubbish like that, and that is annoying. And I'm glad I don't have to do that for, I'm not in a job where I am forced to do that anymore.
Yeah,
I feel sorry for the people who do have to do that, because I know how much pressure they're under.
Sure. I mean, it has absolutely been a hindrance. Even I can, I would agree with you. Because I think a lot in terms of the time you can spend on stories. The fact of the matter is, if you're in-house now and you're a news editor, or not even just a junior news writer, you will be expected to publish at least 5 stories a day, 1 every hour. That never happened in print. You had so much more time on things, so you haven't got the leisure of time anymore that used to be there. And creatively, do you know what? It's really weird, but I think now digital stories are getting slightly more creative because of SEO. Because basically, without getting too boring, how SEO used to work is you used to have to use certain words in your article, and creatively that's a pain in the arse, because that hinders what you want to write and the emotion you want to convey over.
Makes quite stilted
Exactly.
sentences sometimes, doesn't
But
it?
that has changed now, because Google's got more intelligent, and you no longer have to include certain words in the copy and stuff. So actually, I'd say it is getting more creative now.
And it's good that it does allow you to learn more skills as well. I mean, you're all far more multi-skilled than I ever was. The fact that you have to, do video and all that sort of stuff, I think that's good, that, opening it up in that way.
Okay, next question. Can you just pass the microphone to Lila? Lila's one of our second years. I suddenly got back into the... I'm woken up now. I wasn't asleep. I was just... It's a long day. That sounded terrible. Yes. It's been a long day. A fun day. Right, Lila.
What's something that you currently think is missing from lifestyle that new journalists that want to get into the industry could bring to the table?
Love that question.
It's a good question. I don't know what the answer is there.
Mental health.
Yes.
It's now starting to grow. For about, I'd probably say the last year, it's starting to grow. I think if you're interested in that topic, there's going to be so much growth in the next 5 years in that part. Apart from that, what else would I say? Video, like you were touching on then, video is essential. All the newspapers, all the magazine houses are investing millions and millions of pounds into video. So if you are interested in video, whether on the presenting side or behind the scenes, that's a great tool you can use to get into the industry, because a lot of people that have been in this a while don't want to do that. So yeah, those are the two things I'd say.
I would say the nature of celebrity has changed a lot. When I first started, it was very sort of traditional. Celebrities were people on television or authors or films, and you know, they made their way and they became famous. But the way people become famous now is very different. They're on reality shows. They started their own YouTube channels. I mean, there are some people on YouTube I've never heard of that are loved by millions of people, you know. So that's interesting. I think there needs to be perhaps more coverage of them. The fact that I haven't heard of them is interesting.
Although, you know, we were having a debate about this in class the other day. Is this whole influencer scene, do you think that's got longevity, or do you think that sort of will burst its bubble sooner rather than later?
Burst its bubble. I mean, yeah, you can still make money out of it, but I think we're a bit more cynical about influencers now.
I think with influencers that I think it will still be there, but I don't think you'll have leading influencers anymore. I think 1 in 10 people are going to be an influencer because so many people are joining the bandwagon. So the reach is getting a lot smaller because there's more people doing it. So I think it will become so common that almost being an influencer won't be tied to celebrity, I think, at some point, because it will just become normal, part of, you know, normal day-to-day life.
In terms of that, just a supplement question, like the influencers, do you feel like they eating into your industries? Like, you know, in terms of
yes.
anyone can be a travel journalist, anyone can be an entertainment journalist because they're on TikTok.
Oh, yes. I mean, like I said earlier, our industry is so dependent on commercials, and so much of advertising budget now is shifting from journalism to influencers. So that's happening very quickly. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but also, I mean, some of them are very good at their job, but others are not. So that is quite annoying.
Okay, next question. Can just pass the microphone to Harry. Harry's one of our first years.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to ask, so you've both worked freelance and you've both worked for kind of media companies. Did you ever felt like, after you went freelance, that working for a magazine or for some kind of company, would you feel like it limited your creativity in a way?
Yes, definitely. You have to do what they ask you to do. I mean, that is true too for freelancers. You know, they give you a brief and you have to stick to the brief. But I like, the main thing I like about freelance work is that I organise my time myself. You know, if I want to get up late and work until midnight, or, you know, I'm not going to work today, I'm going to take the day off, but I'll work at the weekend. That's my right, you know, my prerogative. But working in-house is very much, right, what are you doing at the moment? Okay, when are you going to finish that? What's the next thing you have to do? Much more so than it used to be. I mean, we used to be able to go out for lunch. You know, can you remember going out for lunch? That was such a luxury. But now it's like, you know, quick sandwich at your desk, and that you're very time pressured, and also pressured about what you can write about and how you write it as well. Whereas not quite so much if you're freelance.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, being in-house is like a ticking time bomb, and there's so much pressure on targets. It's not really a creative strategy. The content you can make creative, and that's your saving grace, but strategy-wise, no, it's not. It doesn't really take a creative strategy anymore. It's all about money and clicks and views, and that is the way it is.
This is depressing.
Sorry about that.
We are fun. There are so many good perks.
There
to
are.
It's the fun panel.
Yeah.
There are.
Come on.
There are.
Right, let's talk about the perks then. We'll
Perks.
start with you, Lewis. Best holidays, that kind of thing. You just saying
The best ones.
Yeah.
The Arctic was insane. I went on an expedition ship around the Arctic for about 3 weeks. That was insane. There's not many countries I've not been to now. So that, I've been to Jamaica. Trying to think of the most exotic places, Africa, and I mean there are a lot of perks in travel journalism. Don't get me wrong, but a lot more when I was freelance, because you literally were getting paid to go away on these trips. Now I'm in-house, it's a lot different. I have writers all over the world, and I'm editing a lot of stories now. Getting quite jealous of trips that some of my writers are on. But so many perks. You have as well. You've had a lot of press trips.
Yes, that's the one thing I really missed when I went freelance was you don't get the press trips anymore, because you need. I mean, you can do freelance travel, but it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
And you before you had titles with big reaches that they knew that you were going to put the article in. I think it's harder now to persuade people to give you stuff, because there are people who lie. You say, I'm going to place this in so and so, and then they don't deliver. So I understand it's hard for companies. But in-house I did. I mean, I towards the end of my time there, I had a fantastic holiday staying in the one and only hotels, which is the pure luxury, in Dubai and then Mauritius. I flew to Johannesburg with Virgin upper class. On the way back, unfortunately, we were thrown out of upper class because Richard Branson was on the plane. So, we met him, and we were in, in economy. It was awful. Oh, yeah.
It was in economy, it was awful.
It was awful. It does spoil you for travel that you pay for yourself. Yeah, I've been to some amazing places.
But you would have had free, obviously you were a TV entertainment reporter, you would have had tickets to theatre.
Yes, tickets to theatres, I miss that as well. I mean, now and again I do get, they do give me stuff, which is great. Meeting celebrities, I just love meeting celebrities. I still get to do that. So I like meeting celebrities early on in their career. I tend to do, I've done a lot of first interviews with people before they were famous. My sort of little mantra is, I made them famous. I didn't really. I mean, they became famous on themselves, but yeah. Well, I did very first interview with Cat Deeley.
Oh, okay.
And funnily enough,
Does everybody know who Cat Deeley is?
She's, Anton Deck and so. Yeah, and I interviewed her, and then she became famous, and just sort of it was really hard to reach her. She had so many agents, and I remember when I interviewed her, we were having trouble getting photographs of her. So I rang her mum, because her mum was still in the phone book then. That's because
she's from Sutton Coldfield.
For Sutton Coldfield, yeah. And we went to her house and did the pictures. And then about 10 years ago now, I did the first interview with Joe Lycett. You all know Joe Lycett, the comedian. And actually, I was telling the story to him. And I said, I hope you're, when you become famous, you don't cut me like Cat Deeley does. And he went, I won't do that. And true to his word, we've become quite, friendly. And whenever I talk to him now, he goes, have you heard from Cat, the bitch?
I love that.
And did the first interview with Gus Kahn from Coventry, So he's really nice, quite down to earth. Still lives in Coventry.
He does,
so that's good. Yeah, so I do like meeting celebrities.
Any awful ones you met that you want to talk about?
Most of them aren't, actually. Most of them are fine. Paul Daniels, you probably don't even know who Paul Daniels is.
He was a magician.
He was a magician, married to the lovely Debbie McGee, who was on Strictly in recent years.
They don't watch Strictly.
He was awful. Just really, patronising and sexist. Didn't like him. There's some others, but you wouldn't know who they were.
Okay. Next question for our panellists. Ooh.
That's very violent.
Who in here wants to become a lifestyle journalist? Put your hands up. Right.
All right, it's kind of interesting.
Don't look at me, look at these guys.
Hi,
This is Sam, he's one of our second years.
This is weird because I wouldn't say I've thought about being a lifestyle journalist before, but speaking of how you saying you're doing a blog of travel, next year I want to do a year abroad, and I've been thinking recently maybe that'd be a smart idea for me to kind of try and branch out, because I've always only thought about sport journalism, and recently I've been thinking, well, I've got to try and branch out, do different things rather than just one. So
Definitely branching out.
About trying to do a blog on where I'll be going next year, how that is kind of integrated into a new culture in this society, but that's kind of about it.
You looking for advice and tips on how to do that, I guess?
I will be. but
Sounds
I'm
a good
gonna wait
idea.
until no one else is listening.
Oh, that's very good.
The only thing I would say is I'd take it a step further, and I would, rather than blogging, I would approach some publications and offer to write stories for free.
Okay.
Free content they will take. I would approach The Sun. I would speak to Lisa Minnow at The Sun and do that. But yeah, can talk about it later.
Would you also, I mean, when I left the Birmingham Mail, we went travelling and we'd approached, I call the tourist boards. And basically we got commissioned by the tourist boards to then write travel features. This is for anybody that's looking to take a year out. And I've told most of you this before, but we had like great holidays where we did features for the Trinity Mirror publications as it was then, Reach. It was picked up by the Mirror and everything. It was like five brilliant, like lovely Hamilton Island, you know. We were camping and then we go and rock up on this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful hotel and went on sunset cruises and things like that. So if you pitch it to tourist boards, or like, you know, Lewis was saying, you go to Lisa Minnow of The Sun, I'm going to write this, I'm going here. It's about having the ideas, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what you've always got to have. And I guess that sort of rings true for entertainment journalism as well, isn't it? If they're going to go, you know, if there's a local theatre company or something that's putting something on, is it a case of going down and sort of learning their craft that way?
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, the idea at the end of it is how am I going to make money out of this, really? But I suppose to begin with, it's more getting the experience, I suppose.
And I guess it's building up that context.
Yeah.
Contacts.
Contacts.
The contacts
It
network.
is.
Absolutely,
It
contacts.
is because,
Contacts is key.
I mean, as a journalist, you will work, I'm sure you've probably already spoken about this, but you will work hand in hand with PRs all the time. PR agencies will be your best friends. You will work,
hate them
yeah.
and
You
love
will
them
hate
at
them
the
and love them at the same
same
time,
time,
but
yeah.
you will work with PRs. This isn't just lifestyle. In any topic of journalism, you will work hand in hand with PR because that's how the industry operates. And so all my trips that I do are through PR agencies that represent tourist boards and hotels and things like that. But yeah, that's not just in lifestyle. In any topic of journalism you're in, you will work with PRs. So it's good to have a contact list of PRs as well as editors, for sure.
Yeah. Any other questions? Corey? Corey's one of my second years.
Sort of related to that, you both work as freelance. What advice would you give for sending pictures to editors and pitching stories?
I'll say for you, you're probably better at this, but I would say the pitch itself has to be in the subject line, short, and something to attract their attention. What, you know, so you write pitch in capital letters, dash, and then, I don't know, a day in the life of a whale hunter or something, I mean, not that, but something like that. And they'll go, oh, that might be interesting. And then you write a pitch of about 3 or 4 paragraphs, short, not long. They haven't got time to wade through long things. And say what you intend to write and who you intend to talk to. That's the basic thing.
Yeah, I would say similar. The only difference I would say is I would do even less in terms of your paragraphs. I would do 1 paragraph.
Right.
I would send 4 sentences because the fact is, like we were talking about earlier, it's so quick-paced now that editors don't have the luxury of reading as much as they used to. So I would, exactly as you're saying, in the subject line, put the heading, and then I do about 4 sentences max. I mean, the Mail on Sunday, famously, the travel editor, well, before she was made redundant, the ex-travel editor used to commission based on 1 sentence. She didn't want any more than a sentence.
Yeah,
So,
so
yeah.
put all these important stuff in the first sentence.
Yeah,
And then a
absolutely.
bit more explanation, but hardly anything.
Yeah, exactly, because
Yeah.
if your first sentence is boring, they're not going to read the rest.
Yeah. and don't expect a response. I know that's awful, but don't think it's bad because you haven't had a response. They just haven't got time.
Yeah, it's such a good point.
Persistence.
If they're not interested, you won't hear. If they're interested, you will hear. Don't chase because you'll piss them off, and then you damage your relationship with the editor. So trust that they will read it. Editors are good in the way that they do read all the pictures they receive, but if they're not interested, you will not hear from them. You won't get a no, like you're saying, you just won't hear.
I mean, sometimes they do have a no, which is nice to at least be told, why they didn't like it.
Yeah.
It's not for us or whatever.
I remember when I was pitching to the Metro at the time, and I just couldn't get a lot with this newspaper. Don't know why, multiple reasons I'm sure, but I remember I would just get a no thanks, nothing else, just no thanks.
Yeah.
So if you get that, that's lucky.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, be persistent. Not with that particular pitch. Don't pitch it again.
Yeah.
But think of something else and still keep pitching them.
Yeah.
And spread your net wide as well.
Something like, just picking up, something like the Mail on Sunday, because it comes to my head. Have you ever sent in a pitch, or do you know of anyone that's sent in a pitch that you've sent in those few lines? You've said these are the people I'm going to interview. Then they don't get back to you. Then the next minute you see it in print.
Oh yes.
And that's why I'm saying the Mail, because the Mail are notorious for doing things like that, aren't they?
Yeah.
So is it being careful not to put too much in there,
Yeah.
so that people don't nick your ideas and nick your interviews?
That's really annoying.
Yeah, because that does happen, and I think if you've been published in a newspaper, try and keep publishing in that newspaper. If you can trust it, that's essential, because I've had that happen many times where I've sent a pitch, I've said, it's not quite right for us. A month later, it's published.
Oh, I know, it's so annoying.
In fact, I am not going to tell you the newspaper, but
Why not? Come on,
I cannot. But I sent a pitch to, I was just about to say it. That nearly came out to a big newspaper. And not only did the situation I just spoke about happened, but the editor actually forwarded it on to the writer he wanted to write the story. And CC'd me in by accident.
Oh, that's awful. That's such bad fun.
Saying, hi, can you do this for me?
Oh, did you reply?
Yes, I did. Oh, yeah,
did
I
they
did.
Respond, or did they just
Nothing, pretend it didn't happen, but yeah. So yeah,
So
be
just
careful.
be careful about giving too much detail. Then there's a fine line, isn't there?
And actually, what I will say about that scenario as well is, the story you're pitching, make sure the publication doesn't already have a specialist doing those kind of stories, because that's what happened to me. The story I pitched, the newspaper already had someone that was regularly doing those kind of stories, so he just sent it to her.
And read a lot of the publication that you're sending it to. Make sure that they will print that sort of thing, and that they haven't already printed a lot.
Yeah.
You want it to be in their wheelhouse, but not what they've already done.
Yeah,
See
it's
what I
that
mean?
balance.
Yes.
So it's knowing your audience.
Yes,
isn't it? Which
absolutely.
is really key.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of our panellists have said throughout today. It's about knowing your audience,
Yes.
knowing what you're pitching for, because something you pitch for the Sun will be very different to something you pitch for the Telegraph.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%,
For example.
yeah.
Will your readers want to read this? Is basically it.
Yeah.
And you do build up good relationships with editors. I think that's key. If you've written for something once for them and they like it, they will think of you again or look kindly on you. And it's very annoying if they then get another job.
Yeah,
but sometimes you can move with them. They'll think of you in their new job. And maybe if they're very nice, mention you to the person who takes over in their position.
Fred's one of our lecturers, most senior lecturer.
You talked about PR earlier. In terms of ethics, would you say your area is one that is susceptible to freebies? And what would you say is the most embarrassing or most regretful freebies situation or experience you've had?
I have got an answer.
I was going to say, you've clearly got an answer.
Travel journalism is totally PR driven. It really is. I'd say 90% of the content is PR driven. I was actually, so funny you say this, I was just reading this article I wrote today for The Sun. Oh, it's so embarrassing. right in the beginning. I remember I was going to France, and the night before, I didn't want to pay for a taxi at like 4 a.m. in the morning, so I stayed over at Premier Inn the night before, and I had on the deal that I would weave that into my article about France. I managed to do it, and even wrote about the chicken tikka I had at Premier Inn. But yeah, that made it into my travel article on France.
Yeah, sometimes you do have to sort of. I don't think you don't have to wave your ethics goodbye. I think you can still do it, but sometimes you do have to write things which you wouldn't write if you didn't. But it's a balancing act, I think. Yeah, and sometimes also but the personal contacts you've made, you do have to keep them a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I write for theatres now, and I'll interview people, and the piece I write for the theatre wouldn't be quite the same as the piece I would write if I was doing it completely editorially free. I mean, when I first started and I was at the Sunday Mercury, because we were a Sunday paper, I would be interviewing whoever famous it was that was coming to town to do a theatre piece, as well as somebody from the Mail and somebody from the Post within the same group. And I would have to find the exclusive. So I couldn't afford to do, you know, Tom Cruise is coming to the Birmingham Rep, not that you ever would, but you know, that kind of thing, you know, to be in this play. I mean, that would be their intro. My intro would be, you know, Tom Cruise has revealed his secret heartache. That was my thing. It was always his secret heartache, or some exclusive bit of it. So now when I'm writing for theatres, you know, if they tell me something really personal, I probably wouldn't even put that in, because it's not what the theatre is looking for. They're looking for, we just want people to know about our show, you know. So yeah, it is a bit of a balancing act, but
it is. And I think as well with PRs is that it's a funny relationship, because you work hand in hand with them and you're really friendly. You know, I when I was a freelancer, I used to go on PR lunches all the time with different agencies. But a part of you, in the back of your head, also has to remember that if you were no longer in this industry, would half of them ever speak to you again? Probably not.
Yes.
So with that in mind, you have to not give away too much and actually stand your ground on things. I do it more now than I did in the beginning, purely because I've got more power now at this point than I did in the beginning. So things that I might have more tried to please them at the beginning, I won't do it now. I'm very much about the work first. And I think part of that only comes with your standing in the industry and how long you've been kicking around.
yeah, that's very true. The pieces I write for theatres now, they don't ever edit, they don't touch, they just go, oh, we just trust you as a writer, you know.
Yeah.
So you're not afraid to sort of criticise, say, pick up something, you've gone to a hotel room and it's a bit dirty or something, or, you know, it's not quite up to the standard that Forbes would want. You're not afraid to do that because the PR has sent you on that trip.
Well, that's the funny thing with travel, is that actually hotel reviews and things, everything I write is totally neutral. I never give any opinion on any travel I do. All I do is state the facts, and if it's a bad experience, often the PR agency will say, well, the client would rather pull the piece than it go out, and that happens.
Right.
So I have never published a travel story that has criticised something, ever. I've never also said it was good. So it's a weird one. Everything I write is entirely neutral.
So it's not really a review?
No, it's more of a guide, really. Just stating what there is, very descriptive, and saying what there is.
I used to really like, you know, if something was awful, I used to go to town. I mean, in terms of, but in terms of films or a really bad meal, I like writing about food. Yeah. But even that has sort of changed a bit. I mean, you used to have the budget you would turn up at a restaurant, they wouldn't know who you were. You would pay for your meal yourself, claim it back on X's. Yeah. I was just talking to somebody the other day about how, because for ages, she's freelance and she writes about food, and she was saying, oh, will you come with me to a theme if I go, which has now just been given 2 Michelin stars in Birmingham. And A, we probably can't get in now, but B, she went, well, there's not enough expenses to cover it. So.
Yeah, so it's all changed. So although you're saying about, you know, people being given freebies and stuff like that, it's not as much, I guess.
No. And the only way you would do it if the restaurant paid for you to go,
Yeah.
but that is very dodgy because then you could not write a bad review.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, like trying to get an expense covered from the publication now, I don't think
Yeah.
it just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah, Khadija? I don't know when the microphone is.
So obviously, like me and Ray are in third year and we're trying to get our foot into the door of journalism, especially lifestyle, because I think we're both into fashion. How would you advise us to like keep a balance between like standing our ground and like, you know, in terms of like ethically and stuff like that, and kind of, because I feel like in the beginning there definitely is kind of, I don't know, more of a push to kind of do what they're telling you to do because you're trying to kind of get the job that you want to get, or you know, things like that. So how would you advise us to kind of balance the two?
well, yeah, no, I would do what they're telling you to do, but depending how bad it is, you know, there comes a point where everybody goes, I think, oh no, I don't think I could do that.
I think the problem is you are at the bottom of the food chain, and I think the only way to kind of safeguard your ethics is to pitch stories that you know are 100% in line with your views. That's really the only way to do it, because often if you pitch a story, they're going to say yes or no. I don't think when you're starting off it will often happen that they'll say no and then they'll ask you to do a totally different story because they don't know who you are. That happens more when you've done a few articles for them that they might email you and say, can you do this story for me? So I think the only way to safeguard your ethics is to pitch stories that are totally in line with your values.
So from the sound of it, do you offer typically, as a rule of thumb, copy approval? So a final sign, you don't?
No.
No. So who's pulling the story then? Is it your superiors in the magazine who are pulling the story? We're talking about the story being pulled.
So,
you said it's a branded.
so that would be, so if I review a hotel and it's terrible, it's the PR that pulls it.
Yeah.
So I'll email.
So that's copy approval.
Yeah, sorry, the PR has that. Sorry, yeah. So the PR, they don't see the copy, so I don't show them it.
Okay.
They don't know what's actually in it, but I'll email the PR and say, look, I had a horrific experience. I will have to write this. And they'll say to me, well, can we pull it? But they'll never see the copy, so I've never given a PR access to my copy. That's a definite no. I wouldn't, yeah.
If you did do a piece where you went and it was like abhorrent, and then it was going to get pulled, would you still get paid for that, or what happens with that?
As a freelancer,
Yeah.
I've never had that situation as a freelancer. It's only happened since I've gone in-house. If you write something and the editor doesn't like it and thinks actually this piece just isn't going to work, you'll often get a kill fee, which is not the full amount. Well, rarely. I think it's rarely the full amount.
Usually about half.
About half. So that happens, but I've never been in that situation where I've had to pull it because it was so bad and not got paid.
If I was a freelancer, I'd be tempted to still send it off to the publication. I mean, the PR can't say you can't write about this, can they?
Yeah, no, they can't do that.
You know.
Oh, so they just recommend you not do it?
Yes,
Yeah.
and you would do that.
And you balance how
Yeah.
much you want to keep in with them.
Yeah, exactly. you would do it in order to sustain your relationship with that
Yeah.
PR, but they haven't got the power. Like that I did a hotel last December where this situation happened where I had to email and say, look, it was really bad. But at the end of the day, if I want to publish it, I'm going to publish it. It's down to me, but I will pull it in order to preserve my relationship with that PR agency.
So
Because
are
you
you
wanna
more
go
likely
back
to
someday.
pull it completely or like amend it to be in line with what they're looking for?
I will pull it because I don't want to put out a story talking about something that I don't want to recommend. Even though my article isn't reviewing it, it's neutral, I don't want to talk about something that I know is bad.
Oh, right, okay, fair.
So I would pull it entirely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Any further thoughts on that, Ross?
No, I was just thinking back to times when PRs have like sat in on interviews with celebrities and then afterwards tried to persuade me not to include some things that they've said. And you do play a sort of little game with them because if there's people that you deal with often, you do have a relationship, and they'll say, I would, you know, it would be great for me if you didn't mention that, and I will say, yeah, but you know, it's a really good thing, it's a good line, I need it. And then you maybe have a bit of bargaining, and they'll say, well, maybe don't say that, you can say that, or whatever.
And they might give you something else.
And they might give you something
That
else.
thing. So they might, you know, I remember interviewing very drunk members of Atomic Kitten, and they were all drunk, and they were swaying all over the shop. And the PR person was like, I really, you can't really put in what Liz is saying. I was like, well, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you won't get to
also-
speak to
you
Danny
al-
Minogue then.
You
I was
also
like, right,
feel,
okay.
you also feel slight responsibility as well,
Yes,
because
yes.
if they're young
Because
and they're
again,
drunk,
it's
and
ethically, you have to think about your responsibility there. But I'm talking, you know, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. But PRs, they're not your bosses unless you work for a PR company. You know, they're not your editor. You can publish and be damned is the old
Yes.
phrase, isn't it? But you
Yeah,
have to
basically
weigh up
always
your
comes
relationship
It down to the editor.
It
The
is.
editor has the
It's
power.
about
and
that,
what
and
you want out of it.
I think that's why earlier I didn't say copy approval, because they don't have the final say. You know, like you're saying, you have to balance in your head, okay, is this PR important to me that I need to preserve this relationship? Am I going to continue working this PR for a number of years? Because in travel particularly, there are the big agencies that you go to for everything. So it's that balance.
And there's the knock-on from that as well. An influential and powerful PR agency that others want to be aligned, other agencies will be aligned to. If they act as a cartel, then, which can happen, their reputation spread the word about this person being an
They can threaten to blacklist you and all this.
Absolutely, yeah. And as a freelancer, it's even more dangerous. I mean, when you're in-house, you do have more power.
You are protected.
Because they need that publication. But as a freelancer, they will quite easily blacklist you, for sure.
At the end of the day, it's knowing what you bring to the table. You're going there as a journalist. You've got a readership, you've got influence, etc.
Yeah.
When they're sitting there as somebody who holds the access to somebody or something very important, they have a bit of power as well, but they need you. You're there for a reason. Right?
Exactly.
But media and PR is such a small world. Somebody knows somebody who knows somebody who knows. That we said we haven't spoken in 20 years, Ros? You're friends with a friend of mine, you know, and it's a very, very small world.
Yeah.
And so if you're going to annoy that particular PR person, they could say, well, actually, you know, you're then going to go and pitch to a different company, and they know that person. It's like, no.
And I think that's the thing. Like, as a freelancer, you need the PR agency more than they need you.
Yeah.
As an in-house, it's the opposite way around. They need you far more than you need them.
Yes.
And there's also the fact that you have something which is so dirty they don't want you to run, you still have that information.
Yeah.
So you have that slight hole over them off the back. You go, well, I've not run that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I still have it. I've recorded somewhere. I've still got that.
Yes,
Let's have a
absolutely.
chat about what's coming up next in the future, you guys.
It's in your back pocket,
exactly.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be first in the order, 10 minutes more time rather than...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It is a game.
It is. It is, yeah.
Sounds
Do you enjoy that game?
Yeah, I did quite.
so you do, don't you?
I enjoyed it more in house when I felt more protection.
yeah.
It is harder as a freelance. You can't piss people off so much.
Yeah.
Any final questions for Lewis and Ros before I ask them for their top tips and what to avoid? Because obviously we've got some third years here that are, you know, steaming ahead towards their last couple of months, and they want some advice. What do they need to do? What are you looking for? You know, when you've been in this situation, you know, and you've got young reporters coming into the newsroom and you're commissioning people all the time, what kind of qualities are you looking for in this generation coming through?
Proactive. Yeah. If you're like on work experience, don't just sort of sit and wait for somebody to come to you and say, could you do this? You know, you can. I don't think you wouldn't be pestering them if you said, you know, can I come with you on that job, or ask questions up to a point. Yeah, just be interested. I think that's one of the main things.
And I think from a commissioning perspective, it sounds so basic, but on-time copy, you would be surprised the amount of freelancers that do not send copy on time, and it puts you right off. To entirely puts you off. You need freelancers. Well, I certainly need writers that are reliable. So on-time copy is so important, and detail and not putting in cringy sales copy fluff bullshit. I mean, you need, you know, this is about detail and facts, and you have to sometimes remind people of that.
Yeah, don't be woolly in your copy as
Oh,
well.
yeah, not woolly.
Yeah, stay factual, detail, and deadlines, which is what we're teaching these student journalists anyway. Deadlines are really important. And also, I guess, when you're looking at copy, sticking to length.
Yeah.
You're commissioning them for X amount of words, or you know, in terms of video. Because I often, we all get.
Over is such an annoying thing.
Yeah.
You've got to go then hack through that copy.
And that's the thing, you know, we knew from when we were at the Mail and the Post, they just cut from the bottom up, so your story would make no sense if you were way over. It'd be the same in Forbes as well. Yeah. But in terms of like these guys, they're producing video, they're producing audio, and sometimes there's a bit of, well, I'm only a couple of seconds under, Lisa. Well, it's not what I asked for. Yeah. You have to be on, you know, you've got to hit that deadline, you've got to hit that length, haven't you?
Gosh, yeah, if you go under the copy, you're going to infuriate an editor. Gosh, if they ask for 800, make sure it's 800 and not 799. Or that's, you know, that's one way to get on their nerves.
Very slightly.
Yeah, going over.
800.
All right.
I would 850 at most.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would agree.
But never go under.
Yeah, never go under. Never.
And never actually not hit the deadline.
Because going under, it's not even just about that you've not stuck to the task. It's going to suggest to that editor that you don't think there's enough meat in the story. Because if you can't even meet the amount they've asked for, they're going to think you're just trying to stretch it and that you don't really believe in the story.
Yeah. Well, unless maybe I've interviewed someone there and they've just said, been really boring or not said anything, and you are desperately, like, you know, padding it out with details of their CV, you know, things like that. But normally your job is to edit down, because they've said so much wonderful stuff, and you don't know how to.
And it's interesting, those words, woolly, padding, you know, as an editor, as, you know, former TV editor, you're looking at copy and you're thinking, I know that this has been padded out.
Yes.
I know there's no real detail, it's just woolly journalism, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, because as an editor, you are analysing word by word. So if there's a sentence in there that I know has just been shoved in, that gets on my nerves so much. I love editing when I've got, even if I've got 200 words extra, but it's really detailed stuff. I would far prefer to be in that situation. I really enjoy editing. I like trimming things down, but not taking away fluff.
It's lovely editing work that's good.
Yes.
It's awful work. And trying to edit work that's terrible.
Having to reword whole articles, which does happen, is painful.
Ray, you had a question.
I was going to ask, if you're already doing like written blogs and things like that in your own time, what advice would you give for getting yourself noticed by bigger houses, by bigger magazines, bigger houses, bigger?
So Ray's got a podcast, haven't you, Ray?
Yeah, it's like a multimedia platform. So we do like blogs, documentaries, films.
That sounds great.
But it started as a podcast.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff we do is like written blogs, written articles. How would you, what advice would you give on, especially in the era of like digital media, like online stuff? What advice would you give for getting yourself exposed, getting yourself
Networking is good. With my Royal Television Society hat on, the Royal Television Society has student awards, which open, I think, in August this year. We're going through the stage at the moment of judging this year's awards, and we have a ceremony in April, which it's a really good ceremony at which, you know, key people from television and journalism, there is a journalism category, turn up and present the awards. You know, journalists from television, we have, you've probably not heard of her, Suzanne Verdi. We used to work
in Midlands Today.
Yeah, Midlands Today. Now works for ITV London quite a lot. She is a judge and presents the awards and is always really good. So try and go to events like that, and while you're at them, talk to the people there. It's amazing how many of the students turn up and just talk to each other and don't take advantage of every opportunity to get your work in front of people.
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about it, do you mean in terms of getting exposure so that you can then get commissioned to write stories by them? Okay, I'm going to be totally blunt. I think in that setting, it's handy. if you meet someone and you can see them and talk to them and engage with them about something off topic. If you're emailing, I wouldn't mention it, only because it is a time bomb now. How editors are working, it's so fast paced, and if you can just come in instead, maybe mention that I've got this podcast and I've got this many listeners. Mention that, but I would go in with a story, because if you want to be commissioned, it's so time pressured now, and editors don't have the luxury anymore of really taking 15 minutes out to properly look at your blog and to properly do that. If you can do it in that setting, it's different, because then they've got more of an incentive to do it in their own time and have a look. But if you're just emailing, I wouldn't.
Although, would you say it hurts to just clip it and have your best 30-second clip just at the bottom, just a clip?
Yeah, you can send that, but make sure there's a pitch along with it. If you just send that, yeah.
It's like, let's say it's like a documentary, like something, right? And I was to just. So you said it was working. Okay. So you said not to like come at them with a story, right? Just come at them with a story. So let's say
with both. I would say I think the point I was trying to make is, don't just email introducing yourself as a writer and saying I've got my blog and podcast.
Okay.
That's going to do nothing.
Yeah.
If you can send a clip of that and a story that you're pitching, that's a lot lot better.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you're in an event,
Yeah.
go up to people and say,
Yeah.
this is what I do, and they'll be interested to talk to you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I was gonna say, if I was to come at them with something that I'd done before, like, oh, check out this thing, like this story, would that be on the same page as like pitching it to them? Like pitching like something I'd done in the past that doesn't have that exposure.
If you've got an expertise in that topic and then you're pitching a story, great.
Okay.
Just make sure there's a strong pitch in there. Make sure you're saying, I'd like to pitch blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That has to be, that's really important.
Okay. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. But have a portfolio of work to show
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, there's a great thing, a lot of journalists use a thing called Contently. I don't know if you guys know of it. Which is a really good portfolio system for journalists. It's laid out really nicely.
What's it called?
And Contently, and you can add in all your kind of individual articles on there, and it's just laid out really easy for editors to go on and look through your stuff. I recommend having a portfolio on there. And you get like an actual kind of website, like mine would. I have one, and it's called like lewisnunn.contently.com or something.
Yeah.
So it's worth joining that.
Thank you.
Good advice. Okay, well, I think we'll wrap that up now. Thank you very much. That has been really brilliant. Thank you. Okay, I expect you all to start networking. Look, Sam's straight there.